And this is an overview of the tool mode for Bark and Butter's level editor. Hi, I'm Murder, the person who made it. So, let's start with the ramp creator. You start with the ramp ghost that follows the terrain. As soon as you click, it will be locked down. You can press F to unlock it. It is not actually placed down at this point. Let's go somewhere where there's a lot of flat ground so I can talk about this in more detail, more clarity. So first of all, let's look at it from the side. That sun is bright. Let's look at it from the wrong side. This profile you get here matches this profile of this curve up here. If I right click on a point in any of these, it will just delete as a point, and I can add a point back in here. If I try to move around points, it will always sort them in left to right order, so it avoids trying to make pathologic curves. That is to say, curves that are not functions, which curves that have more than one y value per x value. However, you can still abuse the in-out control points in order to make ramps that don't really like physics. I would avoid doing this, but it is, that's kind of the case I'm avoiding. So, this is going to flavor the oncoming part of the ramp. The height of the ramp as it goes by its length. Let's actually move that a bit out. This is going to tell you what the lip of it looks like looking at the end of the ramp. So if I want to lift up one point or the other, that's how it goes up. These are multipliers for the height determined by this one. And this last one will give my ramp a little bit of curvature. I just need to make sure that it's straight coming out of the gate, or else I won't have a curvature, it'll just be kind of a rotation of it. So one thing that this is particularly great for is if I want to make a banked curve. So now I can drop this one. Actually, I can just do that. Now I have a wonderful kind of half-banked curve. So I can do this a little bit better, maybe. No. I don't want to do this. Probably something like this. Yeah, kind of. If I work at it a little bit more, I can get a proper banked curve out of this instead of the little bit I'm getting over here at the end of it. But that's not something I'm going to spend too much time on right now. So just be aware there are things you can use the ramp creator for outside of just ramps if you're creative with it. If you hold shift, you can nudge the ramp. And although I say hold shift plus WASD, you can also use Q and E to raise it up and down. And that might also be beneficial. Once you're ready to actually place the ramp, you can press enter. Then you can go back to the inspector and you can actually move around in it and modify its two materials here. The first material, the main material, is always going to go over the middle part of the ramp, while the sides of the ramp are always going to be the smooth stow. Regardless of what the normals are, I believe it's the 10% of the left and the 10% of the right are the secondary that I'm assuming are the walls. As you can see, I have a lot of groomed snow here. That's not always the best. You can see the powdered snows over here. It's not always the best assumption. You might need to play with your ramps a bit if you really do care about the textures of them. And this already comes with its own, if I highlight this again and scroll down to it, with its own collision, which is already correct here, and its own collision shape, which matches it. And oh, you can see just how poorly that the end of that ramp is defined. I try to keep away from that, but it's not always possible, and it would actually make it harder for you to make what you want if I removed all the possibilities where you can do that. So that is the brief review of the ramp creator. Let's move on to the Rails creator. So right now, the Rails creator, whenever you add a point, it will add a point where your camera's pointing at the terrain. Snapping above terrain does exactly what it says. Smooth path tries to make it so that these in and out points try and go, what's its name, to the circle, tangent to the curve at that point. So if I make this, all the way back here, this is not going to be a smooth curve. It's going to kind of create a point there, smooth path, and it's just going to smooth those out. There is actually also a problem where nope, never mind, it seems to be fixed. Don't mind me. I probably fixed that earlier without thinking. Now, I'm going to make panels and make a curve real quick so I can talk about the different aspects of it. As you can see here, one problem I have with this one is that the supports aren't actually hitting the surface. So I can fix that by making the support height a little bigger. Let's undo and then redo. And my support height is, yeah, that's now poking through the ground. As you can see, the fact it's not meeting its shadow is due to something else. Oops. Oh, something happened here with my in-out points. There we go. Sometimes the in-out points love to reverse themselves for whatever reason. All right. So you have your curve, and you have it all default materials. Each of these now, let's go to the inspector so I can show you. Each of these supports is its own support, which for a really long ramp can be a lot of supports, and the panel is just one big mesh. That's not as much of a problem. So now you can change all of their materials and stuff after the case. However, you might have noticed I also have the default rail material here, so you can change what the rail itself is going to be. I have the cylinder support, box support, or custom support, and that's going to change what these meshes are. The meshes, so the actual shape of it. You can choose what material to apply to them by default. So when you make the rail, it'll apply a different material to all of them, and the panel material can be different. So the support height is going to be how big these supports are. The length between supports is, of course, how far away they are, and the support Y offset. So it's possible. I'm just going to put this down a little bit so that I can show you what that does. If you have a mesh that's not behaving itself with the rails, you might have a case where the rails are kind of supports are sticking up through the rails, and that's of course not desirable. In that case, you would move the support Y offset up. In this case, the correct value is 0 because I've made sure that it works correctly out of the box for cylinders, and moving it up is going to sink them down to the snow without properly looking like they support the rail. But that's what you would say. That's for use in that. And of course, you can change it from generating a square rail, which is what this is right now, to generating a circle profile rail, which is that nice cylinder, or two circled side by side, because I've noticed that's also a popular rail in ski park stuff. So that's all the. So this is your basic overview of rail mode. These are already set up with the correct collision, and you should already be able to grind on them. So just figured that out earlier today, actually. Automatic terrain generator. This is my favorite way to start designing a map. So this right now is set to replace terrain, so it's going to replace everything that's already here. I'm just going to show you kind of basically what it does as default. And the default has too high a max height in my opinion. So now it just overwrote all of the data from TerraBrush in terms of the height map, so that I should still have a hole in the map somewhere if I look carefully. Maybe here-ish? Doesn't matter. I do still have all the tree objects, as you can see. So there are also things where you can combine it with what's already there, and there's different modes of doing it. Average will, essentially take the average of the two. If you want to make two mountains side by side, I would use combine max as a first step, as that'll make a smooth kind of blend between the two. I'm actually going to do that now. Let's make the terrain chords 2 over, and let's make another peak. Let's make this one a more reasonable size to start off with. 1 kilometer is a reasonable size for a mountain. You just might want to make it more. Did I? Oh, I placed replace terrain. I meant to say maximum. So let's go a few more over and generate that again so you can see how that was supposed to blend. There we go. And now, you can actually kind of see the seam here if you care about it, because it's obvious this is going down and this is going down, and they just kind of meet. And that's actually kind of a nice way to blend them together. If I'd moved them even close, let's actually generate one right in the middle of them, and you'll see how that can be beneficial for just kind of meshing mountain ranges together. So I like to start my terrain generation by just meshing a whole bunch of stuff together like this over multiple different passes of combining maximum and average and all that kind of stuff to get more complex mountain peaks. Now let's talk about these options here. To talk about these options, I have to explain the algorithm to you a little bit, which is why I saved this for last. This is a type of random deposition model. So basically I start off in the middle of the generated height map image that I'm making with a single pixel of the maximum value of brightness. Then I put pixels in a random walk until they hit a pixel that's colored in on my height map, and when they do, they color themselves in as being one less than the pixel of the height map that they hit. One brightness left, one height level less. And, at first, this is just going to be, obviously, the only pixels that could be the neighbors to the bright pixel are going to be the ones around it, but this eventually builds out into a larger, more branching structure. I do this in 5 stages. So I start off on a 32 by 32 pixel grid, and I send 64 walkers at it. That's what base steps per stage means. Then I move up to 64 by 64 grid, 128 by 28, 256 by 256, as I move up the different stages. So at stage 5, I will have a 512 by 512 height map. Each of the regions that we are looking at here is, each of the TerraBrush regions are 256 by 256 by default. So I'm actually stretching out about 2 by 2 regions of height map over four times that area, twice the length. And that's a little bit why you're seeing these weird kind of artifacts all over the place on it. That's not the only reason, though. If I actually move let's move it up a little bit. This is going to take a bit longer to generate, because the stages get longer and longer, because I put more, I do more pixel walks as the terrains get larger and larger. If we go over to, where did it build? Is this... Yep, this is it. You can see there's still a lot of weirdness. So it's not... The lack of stages is not the only problem. There is some improved things here, but you can also see that the fade as you go away from center is becoming the dominant artifact in this terrain generation. So stage 5 is fast, and you can combine multiple, and that creates better stuff than just trying to create one big terrain, one well-rendered terrain algorithm, in my opinion. And it also offers you a bit of creativity. So exponents on steps per stage. As I'm offering more pixel walkers per stage, I'm doing it by default, the square root of 2. So every 2 stages, I will be sending twice as many walkers, random walkers, to try and move up the height map. The drop-off speed and drop-off speed per stage factor are also both related. In the earlier stage, I have the fastest drop-down of the pixels, because, you know, if I only have 32 by 32 pixels, it's 16 pixels from the center to the edge. So I have them dropping by 1/32th of the total possible height each time that pixel hits. So the first height map drops more drastically than the rest with the steps, because the rest are making smaller and smaller steps. And the amount that they make smaller steps is the drop-off speed for stage factor. So every 2 stages, by default, I have this set again to the square root of 2. Every 2 stages, you're going to be moving down half as much as you did on previous stages. So of course you can move up or down the drop-off speed, and you can move up or down the per stage factor as well. Max height is just what we're multiplying the result by once we get done. I make a result from 0 to 1, and then I multiply that. And that means that the max pixel height, the highest pixel, which is 1, which is the pixel I set at the center of the map to begin with, is always going to be that height, and everything else is going to be less than that height. So everything else is going to be less than this max height in the generated height map. And the height smoothing. When I am moving up the different stages, I make a crisp upscale for doing the modeling and further deposition. But then I take the crisp height maps I have from each stage, and I blur the stage 1 into the stage 2, and then I blur that combined map into the stage 3. I blur that combined map into the stage 4. I blur that combined map in the stage 5, and then I blur the stage 5 map, and that's how I create the terrain. So the first map not only determines what the beginning of the mountain range looks like, it also kind of blends in the basic shape of the terrain as you generate more and more stages, which is part of why the higher stages just kind of look like giant circles, because the first terrain stage has been blended so much that it just kind of fills out the entire the entire image by the time it's finished being blurred. And height smoothing is how much a blur I'm giving each of them at each stage of the blurring and combining the images. So that's how the algorithm works, and what all these very confusing variables mean. Now the regions to make is just the side length. I said it before, I was creating a 4x4 side length. That's from this here. If I want to make the same map but over 8, I could also just do that. This is going to create 64 regions. 8 times 8. So this is going to take a while just to apply the terrain, and there we go. And as you can see, there's actually a lot of steps and weird kind of artifacts going on here, because the height map is so blurry relative to the terrain. So when I'm making terrain, I will go to terrain after this, go to smooth terrain. I'll put my brush size to less than a bit, because blur is a very expensive operation, and it will lag a bit too much if I just put it to max. And then you can just kind of brush it over the terrain. and that usually makes it good enough to actually use. In this case, you should be using... Oh yeah, this is actually pretty good, actually. This part of it actually looks like snow that you might see on an actual hill. You might still want to smooth it out a bit more than that, but that's not bad, and that's a large portion of it at once. I would actually use more stages at this so that I can do a quicker pass-through of the blur tool if I'm going to make such a large amount at once. Over here you can see, like with this, first of all I have less terrain, but because it's also better matched to the amount of regions that I'm creating, it has much less problems to begin with, or the problems are less extreme. You get that kind of waffle pattern here at the peaks, but if we go down, you just kind of see a little bit of the shelving, and it's not nearly so bad. And a quick pass-through just kind of makes that look like more natural snow. I am planning to have a blur feature at some point, but again, blur is a relatively expensive option, so I'm debating the best way to do it, especially since I'm already blurring coming out of the terrain generation, and this is what the result I'm getting. So I'm kind of confused about what I should be doing to make a better blur, better smoothing operation. Okay, is there anything left I need to tell you about the terrain generation? I think that... Oh, seeding. If you really want to explore these options, you can actually set a particular seed. If we just set a random one, yeah, sure, why not? And I'm just going to make 2 regions, and I'm going to set them at -4 and 0. 0, please. And where's that going to make that? It's going to make it somewhere. Oh, I accidentally set my randomness by clicking on it. Okay. Where did that make that? Here we go. Now, whenever I click this button, because I have set a non-zero seed there, it is always going to create the same seed, the same terrain. If I put a 0 here, it's going to do a different one every time. So 0, it's going to create a different one than 100, of course, because it's a different seed. But if I do it again, it's going to create another different seed. Boom. So if you want to play around with these settings and understand what they do, I would recommend using the same seed so that you're using the same randomness each time, and you can see how each of these factors is affecting the end result better that way. Alright, and then import terrain from height maps. If you have a height map of your favorite ski mountain, or, I don't know, maybe your village, or the hill where you grew up, whatever, you can find that in geographical data a lot of the time. You can just import it directly. If it is in an image file, Godot will probably understand it. My algorithm will probably import it for you. By default, I assume it's already using float data to give you actual altitude data instead of giving you a normalized data. If you have a normalized data, which is to say data that's in the range of 0 to 1, possibly because it's been saved as an image rather than as an EXR file or image-like file, you might need to actually learn the maximum altitude of the map and then multiply it by this. That's kind of why I provide you with this multiplier and why it goes to 2,000. I'm assuming that 2 kilometers is pretty big for a mountain, and if you really need to do something else with that, you can figure it out. And again, you can decide how many regions it should be taking up. So if you know that you have a kilometer by 1 kilometer map, that's about 1,000 by 24 by 1,000 by 24. That's 4 TerraBrush regions, or 4 default TerraBrush regions. And so you should be making this 4 is a side length. And you can also choose where to place that terrain and how to combine it with the existing terrain at that point. And then you just need to click Import Terrain and load up your file. And that is the brief overview of the tool mode. This is the one I worked on the most, so this is the longest video. Alright, that is a brief overview of all of these. That's not really... I didn't cover at all the best way to use these tools to make a map, but hopefully this helps you learn some of the more mysterious things into what I've programmed.